Want to make something real fun this Halloween? How about Halloween gingerbread mummies? They're coming to get you. Imagine how much fun your family's going to have making these, making them, icing them, and then getting your revenge on them, eating the mummies. This is a gingerbread recipe that I haven't changed much because my mother made this gingerbread way back. A couple changes I made to modernize it. It's fantastic. It's got a real gingerbread taste. It's not cakey. It's a real cookie. Really easy to make. Go into the kitchen right now. Let's whip up some Halloween gingerbread mummies. All right, we're ready to make gingerbread mummies. So let's look at the ingredients we have here. First of all, the wet ingredients. We have half a cup of butter at room temperature, so cool room. Half a cup of sugar. Again, I'm using my favorite cane sugar, which is more of a brown color, but any sugar will do. White sugar is fine. Half a cup of molasses. That's where a lot of the flavor is going to come from. 1 teaspoon of vanilla, 1 egg. Over here in the dry ingredients, 3 cups of flour. And some extra flour in case it's needed. Sometimes we have to add a little extra flour, and also for dusting the counter later on and things like that. Now, into the flour is going to go half a teaspoon of salt and half a teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon or cinnamon powder, half a teaspoon of ground ginger, half a teaspoon of ground cloves, and a 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. Now, if you don't have all the spices, it really doesn't matter. I mean, it's great to have all of them and get those flavors in there. But if you're missing one of these spices, that's okay. It's not going to make a difference to the cookies themselves. It might change the flavor a tiny little bit, but it's still going to be great gingerbread cookies. So, first thing we're going to do, in the big bowl, we're going to cream up the butter. I like my big creaming spoon here. So, cream the butter. And because it's at room temperature, it's not going to be that difficult. All right. All right, so cream up the butter, and then into the butter we cream the sugar. So all you want to do here is you want to cream it until the sugar is into all the butter. So you don't want any loose sugar kicking around. And try to avoid the temptation of eating any of this. Very difficult. I love butter with some sugar creamed into it. When my sister and I were kids, we used to come home, and before our parents were home, because we lived on a ranch, so they'd be down working with the horses or something. What we do is we put butter on a piece of bread and then some brown sugar and just kind of cream it into the butter. Very unhealthy, I'm sure, but very delicious. All right, there we go. So now it's creamed in. Great. Now, just got to clean off my spoon because we're going to use the mixer next. So I'll get rid of the butter and sugar mix off of here, basically. All right, that's got most of it. Now, what we're going to do next is going to add in the molasses. I love molasses. If I had a choice between putting maple syrup or molasses on my pancakes, it's always been molasses. In fact, my parents had a huge vat of molasses, blackstrap molasses, because we mixed it with the feed for the horses on our ranch. And I used to get into that all the time. My mom told me, it's going to make you sick to your stomach, it's blackstrap molasses. I didn't care. It tasted so good. And I don't know, never bothered my stomach. In goes the egg. And in goes the vanilla. Now, for this, I'm going to use the mixer. I'm going to mix this for about 2 to 3 minutes. So, here we go. About 2 to 3 minutes with the mixer. All right. Okay, there we go. We've got it nice mixed now. You see it comes together, but it kind of lumpy, a little bit lumpy always. That's fine, that's great. Got it all well combined, and that's all that matters. Alright, get most of this off of the beaters here. Okay. And some on the counter, as usual. There we go. Alright, next. Let's put the wet ingredients aside for a minute. We don't need the mixer anymore. Now, all we're going to do with the dry ingredients is mix all of these, the baking soda, the salt, go into the here, the cinnamon, the ginger, cloves, nutmeg, and then what I like to use is I use a whisk, mixing together dry ingredients, just get them nicely combined in there. Alright, so just get those all into there. You can smell those spices smelling good in here. Okay, now we combine these two together. What we want to do is we want to add some of the flour mix at a time. Don't try to mix it all at once, it's going to be really difficult. So let's do it the easy way. We add some in there and then just mix. And keep doing this until we've got all the flour in there. Alright, see how it's starting to mix into there? So once we get that in there, we can do another addition of flour mix. Alright, let's add a little bit more. Just keep doing this, keep mixing. Now it's going to start getting stiff as you go along. And get more and more flour in there. And that's what we want. We want this to be able to form into a ball afterwards. Alright, now, it comes down to this last stage here. It's starting to get really stiff. I like to just get my hands dirty. Just get right in there. It's a lot easier just to mix it with your hands. And you also get a feel for how stiff it's getting. Whether it's going to start forming into a ball or not. So just get right in there. Squeeze it together. Alright, so get the rest of the flour in there. Work that in. Yeah, this feels like it's going to work into a ball without having to add any extra flour. Let's just see how it goes. You can see there's still some dry kicking around, so you work that in. Now if this was a little too wet still and it wasn't going to form into a ball, that's when you'd add a little extra flour. On the other hand, if it gets too dry on you and it's like, oh man, this isn't going to come together, drizzle just a little bit of water in there and that's going to do it. Alright. Okay, see that's coming together in a ball? You just kind of work it and work it and work it. Makes a real mess of the kitchen. But let me tell you, it's really worth it because I just love gingerbread cookies. And these little gingerbread mummies are so much fun. Alright. So it's not going to hold together perfectly, but it's coming together like this. Once it's been sitting for a while, it's going to roll out nicely into cookies. So this is just going to be just right. Alright. Now that I've got a ball, I'm going to take some aluminum foil and if it cooperates and comes out of here nicely, there we go. I'm going to roll the ball up in the aluminum foil. Anything that's left around here, just add it on there. Roll up like this. You put this in the refrigerator for at least an hour. So, for example, if you're making this dough in the morning, if you had that kind of time, you can just leave it in the refrigerator all day. Come home, roll out your cookies. All right, so that's gonna go in the fridge. You leave that in there for about an hour. Clean up the mess I've made here. This is absolutely fantastic stuff to eat. Whenever I make gingerbread cookies, a lot of the dough gets eaten. All right, let's come back in an hour or so and roll this out and make some cookies. All right, the gingerbread dough has been sitting in the fridge for a little bit over an hour and a half right now. So what we're gonna do with it, can't roll all this out at once, too much. So I'm just gonna take it and cut it into quarters. We'll work with a quarter at a time. All right, look at that beautiful dough. Now I'm just going to knead it into a bit of a ball. See how much more workable it is now that it's been sitting in the fridge for a while? Got my lightly floured my counter here. Plop this down on the counter. Rolling pin. And all we need to do, roll it out. I'm going to roll it out to just under a quarter of an inch thick, or like about 4 millimeters. So we look at it and go, oh, okay, a little bit further to go. Yeah, look about that. All right. What I've got here is my gingerbread man cutter. And beside it, there's a small dish with some flour in it. This way, if we flour the gingerbread cutter just a little bit, it's not going to stick as much. So what we're going to do is just kind of work our way over here, get a spot, go down, cut through. And then, the trick to getting these off easily is to use one of these little thin, like a paste, like a icing, I call these icing spatulas with a bunch of different names. Slide underneath, pop our little man onto the tray. Now, the tray doesn't need any greasing because we're working with, on top of the flour, we got a little coating of flour underneath the gingerbread men. They're going to be just absolutely perfect. So, let's cut out a couple more. He goes. And pop him on there. Probably if we turn these sideways, we're going to get a few more on there. What we want to do is we want to just leave a little bit of room between each man. So put another one down here like this. That's going to be just right. Get that flour off there because that's not going to look nice. So we're going to roll these up on here. Then it's into the oven, 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 180 degrees Celsius for about 8 minutes, and that's just right. So let's get, I'm going to finish these off. We'll pop them in the oven. Let's see them when they come out of the oven. All right, while that first batch is over in the oven baking, let's look at a couple little tricks here. First thing, you're going to end up with lots of these little pieces, and you're like, how do I reuse them? Just squish them together. A little bit of extra flour incorporated into it from the board is not going to make a difference. They don't always stick as well together while you're forming it, but once they're baking in the oven, no problem. So, roll it up, squish together a bit like this, work it with your hands, there we go. Now, here on the board, we just grab a little extra flour, we just kind of roll the flour around a bit, plop that down on there. If your rolling pin starts getting sticky, same thing, just take a little flour and work it onto the rolling pin. There we go. You don't want to sprinkle flour directly onto the dough because that's just going to put too much flour on there and it's, you're not going to get nice brown gingerbread men. All right, so we just roll that out. There we go. You can make more gingerbread men out of all those leftovers. Now another thing to remember is as you're making these cookies, as you're cutting them, this guy can start getting a little sticky. A little bit of butter and stuff gets on there. So you just take him and dip them in here, shake it off. See, he's got a little flour on there. And then you get nice clean cuts because nothing sticks. Look at it, it's just going to peel right out of there. All right, so this is a couple tricks to keep in mind when you're making the gingerbread men. All right, here we go. A batch straight from the oven. Nicely baked. They're humped up a little bit. They're going to flatten down a bit in a couple minutes here again. Now, we're going to leave them on the tray to just cool down for about 4 minutes. 3-4 minutes is good. Because right now if I tried to move these, they're a little soft, they'd bend too easy, they might even break. But in about 3-4 minutes, we're going to transfer them to the cooling rack, and we're going to use my favorite little icing spatula. Okay, those have been sitting there for about 3 minutes now. Look at that, they just pop right off there. So just slip this underneath one, pop it off, put it on the cooling rack. All right, we want to leave them on the cooling rack about half an hour or more is fine. We want them to fully cool down before icing them. So, got these on the cooling rack, more coming. We'll come back in about half an hour and we'll ice these up to turn them into gingerbread mummies. Alright, so our gingerbread men, not quite mummies yet, have been cooling for over half an hour and nice and cool to the touch. So let's make our icing. What we have here is 2 cups of icing sugar, which then have been sifted through a little sifter like this. Now you don't have to do that, but it does make it a lot easier to mix because you have no more lumps in there. So 2 cups of icing sugar, 2 tablespoons of milk, and 1 teaspoon of almond extract. Now, you might use any other extract. I like the almond because it really plays nicely against the sweetness of the sugar. But you can also use vanilla extract and you get a little bit beige color in your bandages. That's okay. Anything's fine. You can use food coloring in here. You want to color up the bandages. I'm just going to make it plain. I also have a little bit of extra milk here just in case, because you never know exactly the ratio. It depends on the humidity in the air, the sugar, everything. Even when you're measuring it, how fluffy the sugar was. So, we'll start off with the 2 tablespoons. We pour that into our milk. We pour in the almond extract. And I like to use a fork to mix this up because the fork just works through there really easy, and whereas a whisk would just use up too much of my icing stuck all over the whisk. So just use it, just gently work that in. What we're doing here is just creating a nice paste. We want a good thick icing, thin enough that we can spread it, thick enough that it's going to hold its shape. Okay, that's a little thick, so what we're going to do now is we're going to start adding milk in a minute, but we're going to really be careful when adding that milk. It's so easy to add too much. So first, I'm just going to make sure I get all this mixed in together. And as you can see, it's quite stiff. Good. Now, just a drizzle. Just a little drizzle of milk. Really got to be careful with this because it's so easy to tip over to where you've got runny icing. Just keep mixing. And we are okay. We could add a little bit more. So just keep doing this until we've got icing that will hold a nice ribbon, but still is pourable. Okay, so now we can see it's quite smooth now, and if we let it pour, it's going to pour slowly, and then if we make a little ribbon across the surface, that ribbon's going to stay there for a little while before it starts to sink into the icing, back into the icing itself. So that's good. That's what we want. Now, we're going to make our icing bag. Now, you might have an icing bag, icing tip, great. But you don't have to have those. You can just use any plastic bag will do. And all you do, I like to use Ziploc bags. So if you've got leftover, you just zip it up afterwards. So now, you just want to spoon this down into one corner of the bag. Big globs of it. Spoon those down into the corner. All right, now we have all the icing in the bag. We just kind of work it down into the corner. So most of our icing is right there. That's a nice icing bag. Now what we want to do is So cut a little opening. We don't want it too big. About 1/8 of an inch, or about 2-3 millimeters is big enough. There we go. See, it's kind of starting to come out. You squeeze it out like that. All right. So what you're doing here is putting a little squeeze on here and work it across the gingerbread man. So all you're just making bandages. You probably go just a little bit bigger on the squeeze on this one. Oh, that looks pretty good actually. Push down a little bit. We keep the bandages on there and broaden them out a bit. Each leg, on the arms. All right, and you just keep doing that for every gingerbread man. Just ice them across. Then, when you finish icing them all, we have eyeballs. These are candies. Now we have pink, red, and light blue. Small candies, or you could use any of those little cake decoration balls, anything like that makes for great eyeballs. I like the red ones if you really want like the evil, scary looking mummy. You just push them into the icing. There you go. There we got a scary mummy. Let's see. Look at that. Ooh. All right, so we're gonna ice all of them. You know, put whatever decorations on you want, whatever eyeballs you want on them. I think the best for making the mummy is just to give them some bandages and a couple eyeballs and you're set to go. After you've iced these, let them sit for a while. Like, don't just go putting them into the bin. This icing takes a little longer than like a royal icing or something like that to set up. It's a very simple icing to make, but it will take a little longer to dry. So what I like to do is make them maybe the evening before, put them out on a counter. Let's see, I've put them on the counter here with some cooking paper, and just leave them overnight. And the next day, if you can, up to 24 hours is fantastic. It'll be good and hard icing on there then. These guys are going to be all ready to spook people on Halloween. So enjoy your Halloween. Now, if you go to the link appearing on the screen, you can get the free printable recipe on our website. You'll also find a real easy to follow along recipe infographic, which visually shows you steps in making these adorable little Halloween gingerbread mummies. So go print out the recipe, have fun making and eating these, and make cooking fun again with Kuma's Kitchen.